Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm your host, Diane Gibbs, and this is the last episode. This is episode 280, not the last episode ever, but the last episode of 2018. And I am super excited. I actually was telling Natalie, I had contacted her 2 years ago to talk to her about something, and she said, yes, here's my email. And then I waited 2 years to reach out, but then I finally did. And I don't know if I was just intimidated or if I was nervous, because to me, Natalie's big business. It's not like business like IBM or something stuffy, but like somebody who I really admire, and my first design job was really in the craft industry. So I kind of got this inundation with a lot of crafters, which I fell in love with. And so I feel really blessed to have you on the show, Natalie. And so we're going to talk about a bunch of things, but I'm going to tell you a couple things. Whoops. Oh, something fell on the floor. There's nothing wrong with this book. It's brand new, but I just put Post-its in it. I will take the Post-its out, but one of you will get this book. I'm going to send this to you. This will be your early Christmas present at the end. So if you want to be counted, then you have to do something in the chat. The more times you put your name, not just like your name in the chat, like just individual letters, don't do that. Like the more time you talk, then those will be entries into the, get this. And we're going to go through it in a little bit. So without further ado, we're going to get busy. Natalie, I want you to give them kind of the Wikipedia version maybe or your artist bio, your author bio that people would get, so they kind of get an idea, because you didn't start out you started out as an artist, but you didn't start your career life out as an artist. Can you kind of give them a background on that?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Diane. I'm super excited. I'm a little bit nervous, but it will get better, I guess. So yeah, my name is Nathalie Kalbach. I have a thick German accent because I am originally from Germany. I live in New Jersey, Jersey City. I was not an artist all the time, or a crafter, maker, whatever you want to call it. I actually studied law. I liked art a lot in school. Had a very awesome art teacher in 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, I had a new teacher, and she wanted us to do a sketch of our pencil case, and she came behind me and she just looked at my pencil case and she said, I don't know, Nellie, you really don't have any talent. So, in that age, you're like, okay, I guess she's right. And so I did not do anything artsy or whatever. I dabbled around a little bit in some creative stuff, but not really. And I did the next plausible thing. I studied law when I was So I was a paralegal actually for 17 years. I really enjoyed my job. I worked in 2 law offices that were very, very cool and nice, and pro bono, and I enjoyed that work, and I learned a lot from working in the law office. And then in 2003, so I would always craft something, do something with my hands, but in 2003, I got married to my American husband. We lived in Germany, and somehow I got into this thing of scrapbooking, and it spoke to me, not the rigidness of how it was back then. That's a different topic, but I liked the sorts of different papers, and there were all kinds of ways of storytelling, and I found that very interesting to combine the story of your day or your family or whatever you want with something that's visual and tactile, and it really intrigued me. So I started out with that. And dabbled into this, but I was a rebel. I'm always a rebel, I guess. And I really didn't like this whole, you can only use certain products and it has to be acid-free. There were so many rules. It was kind of ridiculous. And so I just did my own thing. I started to use right away, paint. I sewed on paper. I did all kinds of stuff that was sniffed on back then. Right. And but I started writing a blog. So that's basically, I think, the biggest point that led to everything that started later. So in 2004, I started a blog and I wrote everything about, what I was discovering, and like how I would like, you know, learn how to use certain paint media and use them, or how I would do certain things. And I was just like early that I did that. So there were a lot of people that joined me. I had some, you know, followers that would read what I was writing. And first I started out in German, then in English. You said the Wikipedia part, right? I'm too long. But anyway.
No, I'm good. This is all interesting. So no, this is good. This is good. Keep going.
So anyway, I wrote the blog first in German, then I did it in 2 languages. Then later I switched to just English because it was just too much to do. And you get lazy, you know, every day. And so
when did you move? When did y'all move to America?
I moved in 2013. So, okay. But I did the English blog before,
right?
Just because it was like, you know, I love that there was such a connection worldwide, and, you know, you connect with other people, and English was just the natural thing to do. To reach other people too. And then early on in 2006, I think I was asked to come and teach in Berlin. That was, you know, someone thought I was doing a good job and I could tell other people how to do that. So I was like, okay, I will try. And then
but you're still a paralegal at this time?
I'm still a paralegal. And then I started to get invited like all over Europe. And then at some point in 2000, and actually it's exactly Sunday, 7 years ago, I quit my job in the law office. So, you know, in Germany, we have a lot of vacation time. We are very spoiled. I had 6 weeks of vacation, but I used all my vacation up basically to travel and to teach. And I loved it. I had a lot of fun. My husband was very supportive, or he is still very supportive. And so I would basically take all my free time and weekends and travel around in Europe and teach. And like a year before I quit my job, it started that I was asked to teach internationally more. And I had a gig lined up in Australia and in Greece. It was internationally, I mean, also, you know, further than just Europe. But like in Europe, I would go to Israel, to Greece, to, you know, Italy. I was in Luxembourg, like all kinds of, you know, countries. And I asked myself, like, what do I really love to do? And that was, I really love teaching. I really love designing things. I really love writing. And so I decided to quit my job 7 years ago. And I walked into the law office and I said, hey, love you guys, love working with you, but I'm insane and I'm crazy and I'm very scared, but I'm going to quit. So I did quit, and I thought, you know, you try it for 3 years. Anyway, it's 7 years ago. And after that happened, things just kind of got crazier for me. I released my first licensed stencils in 2013 with a small company, Stencil Girl. I released some stems in 2000 and I think 16. I have to look up the dates again. But I also moved to the States in 2013, you know. I sold my first paintings, had my first exhibition in 2013. And then I was a brand ambassador for a acrylic paint manufacturer called Liquitex, which some of you might know. So I was a sponsored artist and brand ambassador for a while for them, and did videos and packaging, and also consulting, because they wanted to branch out in the craft area a little bit more. So I did a lot of consulting for other companies too. And then I licensed foam stamps, and I wrote a book which was released last year, started teaching for Pratt, continuing education. And so, yeah, that's the very, very, very long Wikipedia.
But you also, what year was Creative JumpStart the first year?
That is 2011. And I think 2012 we launched it the first time. Wait, it's 2009, 2011, sorry.
Okay, so in all of that, you also did this other thing, which you didn't mention, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit, which is the way I kind of got introduced to you. So All right. So you took care of question 1 and a little bit of question 2. Going full time, you were working full time, and then you just cold turkey kind of. I mean, I'm sure you and your husband discussed it, and you planned for some. It wasn't like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and quit today. But what? How did that? Because that's a different life. I think Alicia she quit her job in September, and she was still doing creative work, so it wasn't as drastic. But I think going from working for somebody else to working for yourself, maybe because you had been doing it for so many years and you've been traveling, so it's kind of like what I consider people like kind of getting their side gig going, and now their side gig kind of takes up so much of their time that it's too much to have this full-time job and the side gig. Is that kind of where you were in 2000? Oh, what year did you quit? 2000
7 years ago, 2012. Yeah.
Okay. Is that kind of where you were?
2011, 2012. I stopped. Yeah. I think because I didn't just like go out there and say, hey, no, I'm going to be a teaching illustrator, whatever you think. I did this for so many years, and I built up relationships and had experiences. I went back to certain locations where I had taught before. You kind of like get a feel like what could you do in this time span that you have, but then there's possibilities for maybe more if you would have to have more time to give all your time to this certain an adventure. And I also had dreams, of course, of I wanted to do products or licensing design. I wanted to write a book. So I knew I would not be able and sustain if I would stay in my other job. Luckily enough, of course, this is something that you can probably do when you have, I have a very supportive husband who, was like, yeah, let's try it and see if it goes for free, if it goes in 3 years, then you're good. And otherwise you can still go back.
So you gave it kind of a 3-year window.
Yes.
So did you kind of have a plan? Like, did you sit down and kind of do a business plan on it? Or did you just like, hey, I want to be in a gallery. I have these goals. I want to do a product. And then you were like, okay, I got to figure out how to make these connections, or you already had some of those connections?
I had some of the connections, and I also thought about like what is possible to do. But I have to say that a lot of the things that happened to me later also happened because I was at the right time at the right place. And I also realized I just got to take the chance and open the door that was in front of me. Sounds a little bit weird and wishy, but no, but I can't say like, oh, I totally, like I knew at some point I wanted to write a book, and I submitted, but I never got accepted. But it wasn't like, by this and this time, I'm going to do that. And by this and this time, it was not a real good business plan.
But you had these goals of things that you were going to try and accomplish.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that book didn't get published, but you had another book published. And then you learned about publishing, and I don't know if you would maybe do it the same way. So there's all these other ways of getting books published nowadays. There's so much self-publishing.
Right.
And I don't know. We've talked about that with other Brian, who's in here. He's in Kansas. He's done Kickstarters with books and things like that as well. So, okay. So, since you've gone, so 7 years, so you've done Creative JumpStart. So let's just give them, I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to, let's see, where is that thing? Okay. So tell them, because this is how I met you. Not that I met you in person. We've only met virtually, but this is how I know you and how I know of your work. I learned about you through Julie Fafan Balzer and of Balzer Designs, and she was on the show probably 4 years ago. And from her, I got her email, and then I think you guys had paired up, so I had seen you with her on things in her blog. But then you did this Creative JumpStart, and I think I did it 4 years ago, and it was I loved it. It was very. I got to watch people doing their process. So can you tell people what Creative JumpStart is? And then
so Creative JumpStart is an online workshop which goes through the month of January every year. I invite 30 other artists, so including myself, there are 31 artists for every day in January. I come up with a theme every year, which is different. I invite artists, crafters, and makers in all kinds of different things, but mostly it's like the big umbrella is mixed media. And then I give them a theme and give them 10 minutes to create a video. Well, not to create the video, but for a 10-minute video.
Right.
So, and then they send it in, and then in January, every day, a new video of a different artist goes live. At the end of January, all 31 videos are up. A lot of people join every day, and they actually try to do some of the projects that are shown in real life. It's not only projects, it's a mixture between things that are project-based. So some artists or crafters show something from the beginning to the end and you can follow it. Mm-hmm. Some people show certain techniques. Some people show a creative way of starting yourself out and jumpstart your creativity. And the idea that I had, why I did it, was I'm a summer girl. I really, really dislike winter so much I can't even tell you. And January is my least favorite month. I know this is weird, but it's like, it's very cold and it's very boring and dark too. I also used to live in Hamburg, Germany, so it's like 6 hours. I'm not crying. I know there's people in Finland that have it worse, but I'm saying it's very dark. And this holiday season is over, so you're kind of like, okay, I have all these great intentions for the new year, but sorry, I don't know how to start with it because I'm kind of empty.
Right.
And so my idea was that would jumpstart not only me, but also a lot of other things, other people. And I started, 8 years ago. We do it now for the 8th year in 2019. And I invite friends that I know or people that I have been following for a while, oftentimes new people. And it's fun, and it's a fun community. It's people from all over the world, about 1,500 people every year. We started out for free, and there we had like 7,000 people. So.
And just to let people know, this is it's $60 is the full price, but you can get it today and through December 31st for $50, which this is a steal. So one of the things each week, Nathalie comes on and kind of talks. Or maybe you've done it different, but the 4 years that I've seen, 1 year was really about the artist. It was like the master artist, and that was one of my favorites. Last year was about cooking, so it was all these, like, some people chose that to do like a recipe, and they chose to go down, or some people just talked about their favorite ingredients, or some people did things that were different. But a lot of them are over the head, where you're not seeing their head, you're just seeing hands working. And sometimes people give you some FaceTime too, which is great. But they're taking these different themes, and sometimes each week kind of has a different, it's like a unit sort of, it feels like. But so I get art snacks. Have you ever heard of that, Nathalie?
Yeah. I love that.
So I love that too. So I can't wait to the beginning of the month, because I always think the end of the month's the worst, because like you're out of money. I get paid once a month on the 1st, unless it's a holiday, and then you get paid on like the 5th, but whatever. I'm also not complaining. I'm thankful I have a job. But, so art snacks kind of feels like that. I get excited, and it's these little bitty kind of tools. Well, one of the things, like for me, I totally look forward to Creative JumpStart, because it is that feeling. Like, I was worried you weren't doing it this year, and that's one of the reasons I reached out. I'm like, hey, I love Creative JumpStart. I thought you normally like announced it earlier, because I swear I had bought it in October. I'm like, I got to get that. When is that coming out? And I was so worried it wasn't going to happen. And so I was like, wait, is this, because I wanted to talk to you about how it was a business idea. And so I had told Nathalie about something that I'm launching probably in April, but I'll give you guys a little hint. But it's going to be kind of like a business boot camp, sort of like Creative JumpStart, where there's going to be people asked, and it's not going to be over the head, but you're going to be talking about things. You're going to kind of be giving a little presentation or a lecture, but it'll be on things that maybe we're not so great at. But some of us are really great at some of those things. So I wanted to kind of see what the idea was and where the pitfalls were, because as I'm trying to think about doing something similar, different, but similar, and I wanted to know where, how many did you have to up your server, ability from your host, because you were having more 8,000 people or 7,000 people hitting it at the same time, the same day. And, those things that you don't necessarily think of. I wanted to know, what it was. So one thing I love is that, so to me, Nathalie's way up here, I'm way, way down here. And I'm like, oh, she took my call. So I just love that you're so willing to kind of talk to just the normal person. I mean, when you got a person too. I know you are. But I think one of the things, I think you have a mindset that I think some people can't, they would like to be like this, but they don't have it. I think for just what I've heard and what I've read is that you or what I've seen you do is that you'll see, okay, well, you might not know how to do that, but you figure it out. And some people get really caught in all the weeds and they just say, it's just too hard. I'm not going to figure it out. Because I know like Doc Reed, he's somebody, I think I gave you his name. He's in North Carolina. He's here. And he's a great printmaker, screen printer, does a lot of illustrations. But he also, I think he would be great at making products. But I think a lot of designers would be great at making products too. But sometimes people just don't know enough about the industries or different industries. And one of the things Nathalie and I were talking about was, design is very young. There can be a point where I know that I am the old lady, but it's okay because I'm okay being the old lady when everybody else is super young. But I feel like age is just it's how you feel. It's not necessarily a number. And maybe you're all saying that because I'm old, but that's okay. But I think Nathalie, you just really take things and you're like, somebody else has figured this out. I can figure it out. And that's the thing I love. And I also really appreciate that you're willing to kind of share your knowledge. You shared your knowledge on your blog for so many years, like what you were learning. And I think that that's a really big part of being a teacher. It's also about just being an artist, because if you just stay in your cave, you may have great shows, but it really doesn't envelop people. And one of the things I've loved about Creative JumpStart is every year I've gotten to know somebody else new, and there's just been new, and one of the things, you get 31 videos for $50 until December 31st. Even $60 is still a steal, people. And I put the link, I'm going to put the link here again. And if you're listening on YouTube, or not listening on YouTube, I guess if you're blind, you can listen on YouTube. But if you're listening on iTunes, it's Nathalie, NATHALIESSTUDIO.com, Nathalie Studio, but Nathalie with an H.com /learn/online-workshops/creative-jumpstart, all one word, -2019. So to me, Patricia just said, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? And that's a quote by Satchel Paige. I agree with you, Patricia. So, but it threw me off. I can't remember. Anyway, so Creative JumpStart, think about this. You get this jump into the new year. You get to see new kinds of techniques. And I think Nathalie did it. And this is one of the things that I love about you, is that you took something that you were able to learn from other people and you got inspired, but it wasn't like you doing all the videos. You really shared that with everybody else. And then you were able to be inspired from these people as well. Again,
a lot of the artists that are participating as artists, as teachers, they also participate as students, because I think, especially when you're creative, and as you said, you don't want to be stuck in this box, you need some inspiration too. And it's not about it's not about stealing other people's ideas or, doing the same thing. It's about something that jumpstarts you and that brings you further. I mean, I take a lot of classes when I have time in person to, but I think that it's a small bit. It's like 10 minutes. So it's a good time you can invest to kind of like get an inspiration, and it might come from something totally else than what's shown in the video. Like you could just, someone could make some jewelry, and I don't make jewelry, right, but it can still inspire me to do something else.
Right.
And I had at least, so I always like very spoiled because I get to see the videos way ahead of everyone else. So I had at least of the 30, well, I still have to do my video. So of the 30 videos that I got, there were at least 2 where I jumped off after I saw them, and I went right into my studio and I was like, this is it, and that was awesome. One, I did something totally else, and one, I did something similar and I didn't show it even. It was just like for me, and to, it was fun, and it made me really, it was good. I just spent time for myself doing something creative, which is rare. So, yeah.
So I want to show some of your work real quick. You do a lot of stuff while you've traveled. In the book, you talk about traveling. So this is one, I'm just going to share some just in case people, so you have this kind of love of architecture as well as like a love of the city. Mm-hmm. Where does that kind of stem from?
I've always been living in cities, or most of my life. I was born in a bigger city in Germany, in Düsseldorf, and then I lived in Hamburg, and now I live in Jersey City, close to New York City. Although, who cares about New York? No, I'm just kidding. And so, I love just. For me, cities are very interesting. They're always changing. The big painting that you just showed actually stemmed from an exhibition I participated. It was a gentrification piece where people in the city were interviewed, and then the artists that were participating, based on the interviews with people, what they thought about the changes in the city, made their artwork. That piece that you're showing right now is when you come out of the path here in Jersey City, and it has a building with a big mural by Shepard Fairey, and it's the wave and the Statue of Liberty, and I called this too shall pass. So you can make up whatever you want through that, but yes, so I love to explore my environment, and I also think that buildings, especially old buildings, have so much history and stories in them if they could talk, and I just love painting those.
So the other next question was, is your studio, do you have a home studio? Because I think sometimes that can be a deterrent if it's not in your house, so that you can get up and get started. Is your studio and office in your house, or is it somewhere else?
No, it's in our apartment, and I'm standing in front of the apartment building. So I'm living in the old pencil factory that used to do the yellow number 2
Yeah,
pencils.
Dixon pencils.
So that's for Americans. I think everyone knows that. I was like, my husband is super excited that we live here. I mean, I am too, but he's like, oh, the pencil number 2, the yellow pencil number. I'm like, what are you talking about? So now I know everyone who visits us gets a yellow pencil number 2 when they come as a gift. But
that's awesome.
So yeah, we live in the old factory, and my studio actually looks bigger than it is, probably in photos and whatever. It's the landing of the staircase in our duplex. It's pretty small, actually.
Oh, nice. Well, still, it's bigger than some people have, for sure, and you have a lot of space to kind of play, and you've done really good with storage, because I've seen lots of videos with you. So what about, how did you start working? So you're as an artist and you're creating, but you actually started working as an artist. And I think that this is kind of you wrote for a magazine that I've loved for a long time called Cloth, Paper, Scissors. And it has a lot of different, there's 10 textural cloth things that are 3D, but then there's a lot of mixed media, and which is what I was interested in as well. So from that, when did you start writing for them? Were you in Germany and you were writing for cloth, paper, scissors? Okay.
I was actually not, that was not my first thing. I think, don't ask me why I had the guts to do that, but in 2006, just when I had started with everything, I submitted to a magazine. It's called Somerset Memories, from Somerset Studios, and they accepted it. It was a little layout, and then they, I don't know why, but somehow they approached me and they asked me if I would do a column for them. And it was actually called Nathalie Studio. And that's where my company name comes from, because they were like, let's call it Nathalie Studio. So for many years, I wrote for them. I think it was 4 times a year or something, the magazine, and now it's less. And then when that, at some point, it was over, that's when I started writing more for cloth, paper, scissors. Also pretty crazy. I mean, I'm German and my English is now maybe a little bit better, but my written English still sucks. So, you know,
so that's really impressive then, that if your English wasn't that great, that your content, that what you were sharing was so good that they would have editors that could fix that other little stuff,
they don't
right?
really do that. I had just to like really my husband also read a lot of stuff back then. I don't do that anymore, but he used to read a lot and was like, I don't know.
Well,
but it really forced me. I started like just reading English books and stuff. I was like, I gotta get better with this. I gotta get better.
Well, Doc's saying he's right there with you, and he's American born. He's like, so does most of America, doesn't write real well. So that's absolutely true. So you start writing Somerset Studio, and then you started writing for Cloth, Paper, Scissors, and you're still doing your blog. You're still creating. You're doing more and more workshops. I think that's how you started kind of working as an artist, right? So what did that look like in the beginning? You would just go to like scrapbook stores, or you would go to stamp?
It was mostly scrapbook stores, but then once I, then it was also, I mean, it's interesting probably for people that don't know the scrapbooking industry. Scrapbooking is huge, or was huge in America, which wasn't in Europe, but it was huge in America. And then apparently a lot of people figured out that you can't sustain making money for, many, many years just off of sheets of paper. So the whole industry shifted into into mixed media. And they were more interested. And so a lot of those companies that used to do scrapbooking supplies, papers, and embellishments and all kinds of stuff, they nowadays actually make paints and stems too, and rubber stems, and all kinds of stencils and such things. So from I was this kind of, with my friend Julie Pfeiffer-Belzer, which you just mentioned earlier, she and I are very, very good friends. And, we were kind of like the weird underdogs in this scrapbooking industry, because people were like, what are these crazy women that throw paints on paper and, use it in different ways than it should be. But then when they started branching into this mixed media, maybe we started it, I'm just kidding. When they started branching out into that, we were kind of already there. We had done it for a couple of years. And so a lot of companies reached out to actually us and asked, can you help us, or what should we do? And then it got easier for us to get licensed products with certain companies. So I do, as I said, I do stencils with Stencil Girl, is a small company, and then stems now with other small company called Rubber Moon. They're so awesome. Not the stamp, the companies.
The stamps are awesome too. I love the energy. I love the feel. And so this is one of the questions I asked Nathalie last week or 2 weeks ago. I said, well, how do you know, did you, and I loved her answer because it was really a lot of this whole thing, this episode's called Following Your Gut or Follow Your Gut. I said, well, are you kind of like looking at the market and seeing what's going to sell? And she absolutely said no. She's like, what did you say? Do you remember what you said to me? I said,
no, not word by word. What did I say?
But it was pretty much, no, you just do what you want. You just create work that you would want to use, or that you're not looking at it like, oh, I think this would sell well. You're just creating.
Well, I think it depends, like I don't like that because when you do these things and you have to use them, of course, to in order to promote them or in your own artwork. And if I don't like what I do or it's not then I think that shows. You don't use it, or you don't use it very often, And I actually worked with a different stamp company before, which is I'm grateful to them that they took me on. They're very different in their style because they are more like a kind of, I don't want to say the wrong word, like cutesy style,
right?
And very mainstream. They sell in big box stores. And I was super excited when they actually took me on as a licensed designer. I was their very first licensed designer, actually. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even tell you how thrilled I was. And it was awesome. And yes, it was awesome that happened to me. But it also, sometimes a door opens and you're so excited, you think your dream comes true. And then you realize that there are other parts to it that are not that great. And one of them was, I remember it was the last release we had, where they were like, well, I actually did a cityscape, and that's what I really wanted to do. And then I, sent it in, and I did kind of like some things that were like layered. So it was like a set with a stencil, and then a rubber stamp and a foam stamp, which was also two-sided. And you could mix and match all of the supplies and layer them up and get different results. And so I sent it in, and then there was a lot of work involved, but then they were like, yeah, the idea and the concept are really cool, but I think what our people really want is a bird. And I was like, a bird? I don't use birds in my world. Like, it's nothing bad about birds, but it's not my thing. And they were like, yeah, but we got to sell it, and we got to go and then have big box stores buy it, blah blah blah. So I did a bird. I'm not proud of my bird, but funny enough, that was the one stamp in all the stamps that I did that sold the least. It was the least successful, and that taught me a lot. And now, and then we parted, not bad. Right. You try to never end a relationship in a bad term, but we ended it because I think we weren't a good fit in the long run, actually, with what I wanted to do and what they have as their customers or people that use their stuff. And so, and then I found this wonderful small family-owned company called Rubber Moon, and she's an artist. KP is an artist too, who runs the company. And she's just like, I'm like, well, I have this idea, I want to do this and that, and I'm like, I don't know if it sells though. And she's like, well, let's try it. It's like it's your thing, and we got you on as our licensed designer because we love your work, and let's just see how it works. And that is a great compliment and a wonderful opportunity to have. So I'm really, really happy to work with those small companies nowadays. And would I maybe make more money with a company that is more mainstream and in more big box stores? I don't know. Maybe my stuff wouldn't sell, but I'm way happier with those small companies and being able to really do what I love and what I'm proud of and what I want to use in my own artwork as well.
All right. So I'm going to share something. To me, one of the things that I've learned from both you and Julie is just layering. And there's this is a unusual use of those stamps, or maybe it's not the stamps, but it's a drawing or whatever. But it's really about masking out. It's about toning something else down. And to me, this is just a beautiful piece. This is from your Instagram. And so you're masking certain things out by pushing them back with white, but there's still some of that texture left over. And some things are stencils that you've made, or that you've made for a company. And then some things I think that you end up having as products are things that you do see yourself doing over and over. And there's products like the art foamies. I'm going to try to pull one of those up. There we go. So if somebody was trying that, I definitely think people should use these things first, right? You can't just go up to a company and it's like you trying to write for Somerset Studio or Cloth Paper Scissors and never having done any mixed media. So it's kind of like you have to have an understanding of how people are using this. And one of the things I was trying to talk about before was your ability, these different generations of people have been doing different generations of things. So there's a kind of you have a typical person who's going to come to a workshop for you. But I think the people that I'm talking to that are designers would also really love to they would love to see what you're doing, see the overhead, to see kind of how your process works. I love how you work with colors. Sometimes you're very bold, and sometimes you're really monochromatic in your color choices. And I just think there's a lot of life going on in these, but I love the layering, and the layering really helps tell the story. There's scale, there's all things we do in design. And so really it's just this exploration. And I think designers are mixed media people. We do things with layers just like you do things with layers, except we can hit Command Z a little bit easier and undo something. And so sometimes you have to live with something that you've made and how this came across. So I love that. That's how you're ballsy to me, is that you are able to do that. But then that I'm just going to share the screen real quick and just zoom through some of these Instagram, because there's one in particular, because you have all these beautiful paintings. And this is the one that I was thinking of as very monochromatic. But then there's also the art foamies, which is a different kind of stamp that you've created sets for. And people, use different things. And I love this one. I think this kind of shows that you can really make these patterns of this one kind of things. These are thicker, harder blocks. So they take different kind of, maybe not rubber stamp ink. I guess I know they can, but these can take paint a little bit better, right?
Yeah, they are big foam, and what I love about them is that you can use them, as you said, with acrylic paints. These are rubber stamps, actually, but yeah, and then you can also print on different surfaces. So I can use it on fabric or on canvas too. And what I love about the foam is that it creates texture. So you have tactile texture, because it's never really even, if you apply thicker paint on there. I'm a very tactile person. I love if something has either actual visual or visual texture. So any of it, but there needs to be some sort of texture there. But I also love just like something that, I want to touch this.
So somebody asked, a tool that maybe a designer would use is like linoleum. The art foamies are different to some extent. I've actually used some, but can you explain, when you're doing a design for one of those are very graphic. Obviously you probably do those on the computer, right?
Yeah.
But you started, do you carve? I know Julie does carve December. So that's her thing. That's her thing. You take over January. So, but so it's not, the foam is thick. It's black. I don't know if it always has to be black, but the ones I've seen are black, and it's not squishy like linoleum. Not that linoleum's really squishy, but it gives more than the art foamies or those.
Maybe actually, I would think it's the other way around. I think they're a little bit more. I don't have one right here that's unpacked, but so they're a little bit. They don't squish down all the way, but they give a little bit, and they have to in order that you can actually print with them on fabric or canvas.
Gotcha.
So they're not as rigid. But I don't carve those. I mean, I might draw some designs, but funny enough, with the art foamies, those are mostly done inspired by photos in my travels and things that I've seen. And then with the very rudimentary, that's why you guys are way better than me. Very sad it's not even Photoshop, it's Photoshop elements. It's
That's okay.
Really sad. Skills that I have, I make, I create some files, and then I have someone who has to help me making them into better files, so that the company, I work with a company in Canada, they're the Art Foamies owners, also small company, Emmy. All my companies are, funny enough, owned by women, which I find is awesome. And so Emmy doesn't want to kill me when she gets my files. So.
So I'm putting over in the chat, and it'll be below if you're listening on iTunes, or it'll be below in YouTube. So it's nataliestudio.com/shop/in-store. And you can get her, I think they're cling stamps, the clear ones, right?
They're rubber stamps.
Okay,
Yeah.
so rubber stamps for like the stroll through the hood, right?
Yeah.
Those ones. And then there are some, I think, art foamies in there also, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so you're creating things that you want to use in your work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the most important. I mean, I guess it depends on what you're doing, right? If you're an design, I'm not a designer really, right? So I wouldn't call myself a designer. I'm not an illustrator. Anything that I would say there would be the biggest lie ever on earth. As you just heard, I barely know my way around in Photoshop elements.
I would think you were an illustrator. I actually don't think you need to use the computer to be an illustrator, but you're definitely a storyteller. You definitely do things in series, and that's an illustrator to me.
Okay.
So I think you are definitely a storyteller. So I want you to claim that one. But to me, like you have a lot of other avenues. You're making work, you're making art, you are also making products, and then you're still making art with those products, and then you're still teaching workshops. I see that you and Julie went to Australia, and y'all go all around, and you go all around and you do things. And then you write books, you do Creative JumpStart. So there's lots of other avenues of revenue. When in these 7 years obviously you didn't start day one being like, hey, we're going to do these 18 different things of revenue, but you had ideas of what you wanted to do. And then what didn't you expect? What did you 7 years ago did you not expect? And now it's an area of revenue. It's a revenue stream.
Oh, that's a good question.
I didn't pre-ask you that one. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Ooh, no. I think so. Teaching was kind of like, that was in the beginning already. But I think so all of these things sound like, and I think everyone who is a designer, artist, we all know that it's not that you get like gazillion dollars, right? So let's face it, sometimes I get a royalty check I get like my royalties every 3 months, and one of them might be just like $60, and that's $60, so, it's not that you can just like lay down and say, that's awesome. I don't have to work and do anything anymore, which I don't think I wanted to either. I love creating and do things like that. But the biggest surprise that I would have never thought would have been like the DVDs that I did with
Artist Network.
Rock was hold on, I just saw that. That's funny. Sorry. The biggest thing was probably like the DVDs, and I think like doing that in America too, in a different country, in a different language. that was pretty weird, and I wouldn't have thought so.
So tell them about that, because that's another thing. So you're doing workshops, and then art. So Cloth, Paper, Scissors, I think, is owned by the Artist Network, right? Or
Yes.
they're connected to them in some way.
W, yeah.
Oh yeah, so F&W. So they bought the Memory Makers where I used to work, Scrapbooking magazine. So, and that's How magazine was F&W. So if you're, in design, it's definitely an area that is, they're crafters, they're designers, they're artists. So they also have this whole group of things that you can find on Amazon, or you can find through Cloth, Paper, Scissors, or wherever, that it's this thing called Artist Network. And they do videos. You can watch like short clips of videos on YouTube that are this, and then you can also pay. And these are, sometimes there's just a PDF. It's they'll kind of like a little ebook sort of, but you're just getting this. Sometimes they'll also do a DVD with it. And that's what Nathalie was asked to do. So, and this has been, you've done a few of these. It's not like you did one and done. So when were you approached in the beginning? And do you think it was just from doing the writing with Cloth, Paper, Scissors? Or do you think it was-
that's another like weird thing where I'm sad, like sometimes things happen and you're like, what just happened? So I at some point I was asked, and I think it was because of their articles, to do what's called an art journaling. They called it Art Journaling Live. What they did was they invited 4 artists to a craft convention, and then those 4 artists would do a class live in front of 70 people. They would all get the same amount, the same supplies. And then each of them had like, I don't know anymore, maybe it was an hour or half an hour. We had time to do an art journal spread. So like a visual journal, sorry about that.
I need to eat.
He's deaf, so he can't hear us, so, but we can hear him. So you would do the spread, and then they would film it, and while we were teaching it to 70 people live, and then that would become the DVD. And I don't know why they thought I was a good fit, because again, not my language. So they asked me for the second edition to do the live show, and I think they liked how it worked and how I was doing live and going on the DVD, that after the thing, like right on at the venue there, the producer came to me and she said, would you be interested in doing a couple DVDs with us? And I was like, I guess so. I mean, I was like, oh my God. So, and yeah, that's how that came. And I think from that, actually doing the DVDs and then being closer with the publisher, came also the possibility for the book. It's always like a kind of like a, like things that you don't expect would go together or come out of it. Funny enough, all the things that I planned never really worked out. All the things that I kind of just like rolled with it, and I saw an opportunity that worked out. So,
well, I think that's one of your superpowers, right? That's one of the things, is just saying yes and not necessarily knowing, but you just said yes and we'll see. Because maybe you didn't have that in your plan, but it ended up being, it's a good avenue for meeting new people, or a good avenue for getting more workshops, or it's a good avenue for making some extra money or extra connections with other people, like Rubber Moon.
Rubber Moon, yeah.
So, and I think sometimes it's about these relationships, and I feel like on the outside, we think, oh, they just, she's doing, I mean, you were a Liquitex artist. Like, that's super impressive. Like, you're on the packaging. Like, that's amazing. And I think that it is because of you and your work. It's has, you've said this a couple of times, like, I did my English, but like, I think your English is great.
Thanks. Well, I think, I actually was also lucky with Liquitex because they started working with me when I was still in Germany, because they were looking for someone doing something in mixed media in the European market. And then I moved, and they were like, dude, you're moving to New Jersey. We're in New Jersey. So, it was like kind of like things that happened there. But one of the things that I often think about, so one of my a good close artist friend he works through Liquitex. I got to know him, Jimmy Leslie. He's their in-house artist for many, many years. He was a college professor for art, and he's just an amazing, cool dude. But, sometimes I call him up and I'm like, I don't know. But I remember when Liquitex asked me this, and then at the same time, a student of mine who works for Pratt asked me if I would do some courses at Pratt for the continuing education department. And I called Jimmy up and I said, this is the first time where I'm all really think like this is too much. Like I feel like a total fraud. And Jimmy was like, and he's kind of like a mentor for me. And Jimmy was like, well, the only thing you have to do is like you have to be just one step ahead of everyone.
Right.
And I was like, what? And he's like, well, you just have to be one step ahead. So, and then you figure it out as you go. And basically I was like, well, I guess that's what I've been doing all along. Like I've just been figuring out, but in a way it's nothing different to what you do when you are a paralegal in a law office, because, you get all kinds of different cases. And no case is the same as the other, and you are always just one step ahead, and then you get the reply from the other lawyer, and you go back and forth or whatever, and then you're like, okay, now we start from scratch, we do research, we figure out how we do that. So I think that's what I learned there, and that helped me too. But Jimmy's right, maybe 2 steps ahead is good though.
So definitely have been in situations like that when I was teaching. Sometimes if you're learning something new, but my friend Chris Doe, he always says, just teach what you're learning, because you don't have to be an expert. You'll never be an expert. But I think that's been your cape of your superpower the entire time, is that you have been willing to teach what you were learning while you were learning. And you're always exploring. You try different things. You try different tools. You're not just doing the same artwork that you did 3 years ago. You're not doing the same artwork that you did in the summer. So I think that's when we get stagnant and we stop. That's where the life starts being a factory work instead of something that's enriching. So Doc asked, what did you learn from taking it on when you felt underqualified?
What did I learn? That breathing is good. No. No, I think I learned that, I still think that I'm still learning, because I still am in those situations and get myself in there. But I think I learned that everything will work out. I mean, like if I can't just stay in bed and sleep and think that that's not going to happen. But I think that everything works out. And I think my biggest thing that I've always, I learned it and I also lived it, is communication is key. Like if I feel like I can't deliver, in a certain way, or there are problems, or something I see. I did something this year with with Liquitex, and it was just, they gave us this task that was so insane, and I basically went back and I said it's not doable, instead of just like the other artist I worked with was like, I don't know. And then they might just say, well, then we go somewhere else. And I was like, well, but we can't deliver. We will deliver something that's not good. And we need to communicate that as early as possible. So I think communication is key, something I learned. And also that it's okay to say no.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes there's something different about imposter syndrome. I always said superpower. I have this thing with superpowers, but I also have this thing. I felt like I was a super poser, because really S and W are right next to each other on the keyboard. Like I always, when I type power, I type poser. And so I was like, oh, Diane, see, even subconsciously. But I think that there's something when you know what you can do, even if you haven't done it before, there's that. And then there's also knowing what's possible. And I think that comes with experience, right? Like if you want me to do this and it should take me 2 days and you're giving me 2 hours, I can't give you a 2-day result in 2 hours. You're not going to get that. So
I think that's the fear that we all have. And probably, most of you probably know that, is that if I pass up on that opportunity or I say no, then that will be it. My life is over. I will never get a better gig or something. And it is scary when you're a freelancer, and this is what brings like it's your bread and butter, and you're like, okay, I'm just now telling this one big company that I've really want to keep. I can't deliver. I can't do it the way how you want. And it worked out. It was good.
Well, I think whenever I've heard people tell these stories, they don't want to give up the opportunity, but sometimes they'll say no. And then sometimes something will surprise them. The company will come back, or maybe they say yes. Andy J. Miller of Creative Pep Talk, he's another podcaster. He talks about he wanted to work for, I don't remember, maybe Nickelodeon or something. And he got this opportunity like 13 years ago. And he just couldn't do what they wanted. And then he's like, I have ruined it. I will never get this opportunity again. But then he did. Like 10 years later, they gave him another opportunity because he had grown, and it's different. And people so I feel like, there's always different people. You're going to inspire different people at different times in their life. And so I feel like, if you're continuing to keep growing, I think that will happen. So we are at our 1 hour. I was about to say 1 year mark. So really answer these super fast. Okay, Nathalie?
Okay.
You travel a lot. You do a lot of workshops. What's the best way for, how have you, because you draw a lot while you're on your travels. I'm skipping some of these questions. Is traveling something that's always inspired your creativity? Because in the book, you talk about it a lot. It's a lot of traveling and things to do while you're in. So has that always been, or is that something since you've been an adult?
No, I am a real half Italian. So my father was Italian. He died when I was a baby. But I spent most of my summers with my family in Italy. So I would be put in a plane by my mom and then taken there somewhere, abducted. No, I like it. So, but yeah, and we moved a lot too, and I always loved exploring new environments, and realizing what's new and what's old, what's the same, what's new, and just like I'm just a very, very curious person. So yes, traveling has always inspired me.
So you have some pictures from Amsterdam that I'm showing now. So in these, you do a lot of buildings. But you definitely, I'm assuming that these buildings were not these colors, that maybe they were sort of, but that's the thing I love about your work. There is a lot of texture. There's a lot of different color, and you're seeing just the beauty in some of these older kind of buildings. Whoops, I didn't mean to go there, but this is another one. And then this is a great quote. I think I asked you, the question was, what advice would you give your younger self? And then you told me, oh, show this one. So I'm showing this one. Can you talk us through this, why you think that, and read the quote so that people listening.
It says, don't cheat yourself out of the liberating process of art making by limiting yourself to perfection. And that comes, of course, from my art teacher back then, but also because I think we all have this kind of like perfect picture in our head. And then if that doesn't get there, and in all kinds of, whether it's like art making or whatever, but you have this perfect picture in your head, and that limitates you. And sometimes you get too scared to do anything because you're like, I will never get to this. So speaking of imposter or poser, like if you're like, oh, I can't really do this, or I will not do that, then you take yourself away the joy of art making and creating and trying things out. So so if I was talking to myself as a younger self. I would try to tell. I wouldn't listen though. I wasn't a good listener back then.
So well, obviously you listened to that one teacher, the 8th grade teacher, or what she was like, right? You chose to listen to her like instead of the other people. So, but I think it all makes you who you are, and it really does make it for a fascinating story that you really kind of went a different direction. But I do think it's the research. It is the ability to kind of think on your feet, and that every case is different, and every canvas is different. Every building is different, right? There's always. So Taylor laughed that my younger self wouldn't listen. So Doc had a question about communicating, and I want to get to it. Do you have to learn to communicate differently with different people and personalities?
Yeah, I think you mean like for
I guess business relationships. He's saying in the beginning, and then you morph into being more of yourself as the relationship develops and become more familiar. And he says, does that make sense? So like in these relationships, say like with Rubber Moon, you kind of knew it was a good fit because she was willing to take a chance on something that you thought was also a good idea. How and the other one may have been like, okay, well, I'm going to try this with this other stamp company, but it just ended up it wasn't a good fit. But I don't know if you communicated differently in the beginning. I think everybody starts.
Yeah, I just read like I'm a pretty casual person too. I'm not really, even the law offices where I work, we were small offices and very close and very unsimilar to what you think a law office is. As I said, we are pro bono people,
Right.
So lawyers came with backpacks into the office anyway. So for me, it was hard to realize how to communicate sometimes in an environment that was like bigger companies. Also, the American way of doing things is a little bit different. So in Germany, even though you're casual, you're very to the point. So we are very, very direct. Probably why I love New York so much, or Jersey, because it's like very close to me. So I had to learn to not, as we say in Germany, fall with the door right into the house. In German. That is a little bit hard still to me. I just don't like playing games, or so I'm not very good with that. But I think on the other hand, that sometimes people see that and they actually enjoy working with someone who's very direct and tells them, hey, this is what I can do and this is what I cannot do. I think most of the companies that I work with I have met some of those people at some of the conventions, and that was like a point. I'm not good in making relationships without ever talking to someone. I think my written me is still very like, very. I could
give yourself too hard of time.
Communication skills.
But we're always improving. I'm improving too, and I don't know any other language, so I know how to say please in German. That's it. Right? So another quick one. How do you recharge, and what inspires you?
I do recharge spending tons of times with my friends, going outside, and I am an avid reader. I read so much, it's nuts. I read every nonfiction, fiction, sorry. What am I talking about? Fiction. Yeah, so I read a lot, and that's how I recharge, yes.
So when did you start thinking of yourself as an artist and also an entrepreneur? Or do you think of yourself as that? Because I definitely do.
I think I thought of myself as an entrepreneur earlier than I was thinking of myself as an artist. So probably 7 years ago, I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. Artist, I think through a lot of friends that I have now, also here in the States, that are artists and have been have also not been to art school and very successful, and telling me to not listen to that weird voice in my head. Not that long, I feel like very confident in just saying I'm an artist. And if you have a problem with that, that's your problem, not mine.
Right. Right. For sure. Okay. So we are giving away this book. This is Nathalie's book. It came out in June and it is full. Let me just real quickly tell you, there's tons of stuff. Like if now with all this, you're like, I want to get my hands dirty. She has these great, each section kind of has an exploration worksheet and it kind of takes you through some things that you could do. And then there's like the page that's always opposite, it's kind of giving you a tip. This one is take public transportation whenever possible. She does a lot of stuff while she's traveling. There's that one from, I think, Sydney, the opera house, that I love so much. I know I'm skipping some. And I think we talked about, maybe not, but we talked about these masking. And she does these monoprints. And with that one piece that I showed you, this is a different, but it's kind of the same technique where she's kind of cutting out. And these are step by step. So you kind of get to go through the entire process. And she's using, I think, a jelly print or jelly plate.
Yeah.
And I tried to make one. It didn't work. I think you should just purchase one from the maker. And so she's kind of taking you through the whole process. But I want to show you guys this. There's just so much texture in there, which I absolutely love. And then and the back, it's just filled with some other people who definitely have inspired me as well. There's, I think, Jimmy that you were talking about.
Oh, yeah, that's Jimmy.
There's Jimmy, and this is Ray, and Julie's in here too with her stuff as well. So it's just the last chapter is just filled with people that also kind of inspire and do similar stuff as Nathalie. So this book is going to go to someone. In the beginning, there's a whole bunch of tools and things that you probably have and maybe haven't used in a while. So I want you just to say stop at some point, and then I'm going to pick one of the people in the chat. So anytime between now and whenever you want to, you can say, and that person will win.
Okay, stop.
Okay, it is, let's see. It's Brian. So he's gone, but I know Brian. So I'm going to send Brian this, and Brian's also a painter, so he will love this. He and his wife are both painters, so they go out. They like to go outside. So Brian, congratulations.
Congratulations.
I will text him and let him know. So he will. They're all saying that, so for sure. Nathalie, thank you so much. I want to make sure everybody knows how they can get in contact with you, and hopefully you guys, some of you guys will go and do Creative JumpStart with me and Nathalie in January. And you can get your $50 ticket. If you're listening, you can get it from, I'm going to put the thing in the chat again, but if you go to nataliestudio.com, remember Nathalie with an H, NATHALIESSTUDIO.com. And that's right there. And then you can also follow her on Facebook at Nathalie Studio. On Instagram, it's Nat Kalbach, KALBACH. It's just NAT. And then her last name, which I just said, I hopefully didn't completely mess it up. And then if you want to get her book and you're not Brian, then you can go to nataliestudio.com/shop/in-store. She also has a ton of one of the things about Creative JumpStart is that you can download all the videos for almost a year. You have access, and then she gives you a warning. Hey, I'm going to be taking these off the site. But that's another great thing that Creative JumpStart is. But there's also other classes that you teach online, and so those are things that you guys, if you are in New York, sometimes or around there, she'll have in-person classes. Or maybe you want to bring her down to an AIGA event or something. I'm sure she would be up for something like that as well. Maybe doing a workshop. But then there's also, you can take some of these classes online, and they're great. They're absolutely terrific. You can buy products. I think I got some stamps, and hopefully I think I'm going to get them this week. So I can't wait to I'm getting ready for Creative JumpStart. That's for sure. And you can also, I said on Instagram, books and products and classes. And then do you send out a list of classes that if you're traveling around, how would people, if they wanted to take one of your workshops, what's the best way for them to find out when your workshops are?
Usually Facebook or the newsletter. So I post everything on Facebook. I have no in-person workshops planned for next year, though.
Well, it's early. It's not even next year.
No, I really don't.
Oh, you don't want to do any workshops?
I might do some if it's something, where I'm like, oh yeah. I'm taking a break to.
You're taking a sabbatical.
Yeah.
That's good. I think that's terrific. I took one last January. So Nathalie, thank you so much. Thank you for being my last guest for 2018. It was a great last episode for me. I am super excited that I got to pick your brain, and thank you very much. And if you're listening and you want to support the show, you can always do that by going to patreon.com/Diane Gibbs, and Diane's with one N and two B's. And these are all in the bottom. If you love to read, then you would love 2 free books from Audible. You can do that by going to bit.ly/Design Recharge, and you will get two free books from Audible, which I love to read too. And I listen to some fiction. I know maybe that's not considered reading, but I do. I have a long drive, and obviously you can't read a book and drive. So I listen, and people, Game of Thrones I listen to, and they're doing all these accents, and it's just fantastic. I think it's better than the TV show for sure. So there's other things. I also listen to nonfiction books as well. So if you guys want to do that. And then when I make websites, I use the Divi, which is a theme. I love this theme. If you want to check it out, you can purchase one, or if you're doing a lot of web design, then you can purchase the whole thing for $250. And my cost doesn't go up. These are just affiliate links, so I just get a cut of that. So you can go to bit.ly/Diane Loves Divi, and that's over in the chat too. Anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy whatever Kwanzaa or whatever people celebrate. I'm happy to be taking the next 2 or 3 weeks off, and we will see you in the new year. And we start the year off with Britt Davis, who is the designer at the Falcons. And Britt is a woman, if you didn't know. And I'm excited because a lot of times in men-dominated sports like football, there's not a lot of women that are even in the industry doing things. I mean, in the past few years, there have been commentators and women are on the sidelines and not just as cheerleaders, right? They're interviewing the coaches or whatever. So just breaking into that field, I think, is a really big thing. And I'm excited to interview Britt. I think it's the first Wednesday in January. So January's starting us off with a bang, and I'm excited to have you guys come along for the ride. I hope you guys will come and join me with Creative JumpStart, because I will be using every single day. I love it. I look forward to January like I look forward to my art snacks. And I don't get paid from art snacks at all, but I like them. But I think I love January more. I was so worried Nathalie wasn't doing this that I emailed her and made sure. But so I hope you guys will do it. It's, to me, super cheap for what you get out of it. And it's 31 videos that will just knock your socks off. So she hadn't told me what the theme was. I can't wait to learn what the theme is. We'll see. But Nathalie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was so much fun. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will see you guys in 2019.